let's take a moment to discuss BrightSign's BrightWall feature. This feature is designed to offer synchronized playback on multiple screens in a very simplified way. Without this approach, you would have to build 3 separate but synchronized projects. But the BrightWall feature lets you build a single project to manage as many screens as you need to operate in complete synchronization. It has some advantages. As I just mentioned, a single project manages all the players in the video wall. You can synchronize, flawlessly synchronize, frame accurate synchronize multiple files across multiple screens, or you have the option to stretch a single file across a screen or a live stream. For example, if you had a streaming video encoder somewhere on the network, that streaming signal could be received by multiple BrightSign players to synchronize on a video wall. Generally, I don't like to stretch files because resolution goes down, but it does work. You can publish BrightWalls using any of our supported publishing methods. That is, you can publish direct to memory cards, you can publish over a local area network direct to players, you can publish via the BrightSign network service. There are some disadvantages to BrightWall. Probably the most important is that if a player is in BrightWall mode, it is not capable of other interactive features. For example, interface to a touchscreen or button control panels. BrightWall projects are scheduled and will run as scheduled, but cannot be interactive in any other way. This is a disadvantage in some applications. When a player is in BrightWall mode, it is incompatible with other project types on the same schedule. Now, that doesn't mean that once a BrightSign player is in BrightWall, it can never ever do anything but BrightWall. All it really means is that when you publish a schedule of projects to a player, they either all have to be BrightWall projects or none can be BrightWall projects. If you need to move the player out of BrightWall mode, publish a schedule of projects that are not BrightWall projects and your player will revert to normal operation. And finally, only video walls can be synchronized. Only video files can be synchronized. If you have a still image that you need to incorporate into a BrightWall project, the best approach is to take that still image to a video editing piece of software like Adobe Premiere and render it out as a video file and then use it in your BrightWall project. Now, the configuration of a BrightWall is fairly straightforward. Let's imagine, for example, this 2 by 2 for 4 screens total. Video wall. For each screen, I need a BrightSign player. I show the LS player here. Really, any BrightSign player can be used. All current models support this mode. So here I have 4 screens and therefore 4 LS players all connected to their screens. I need a data switch. It should be a simple unmanaged switch that will allow the players to communicate with each other. This is how they maintain frame accurate sync. And as a matter of fact, the accuracy is so good that the players don't drift. One player will set up a clock reference that the others will follow, and they will maintain frame accurate sync for as long as the project runs. Now, if you, in my case and in my example, I have a separate video file for each screen. So for every screen, a player, and for every player, a file, all connected to the same data switch. The project will run just like this. There's no need to connect the project to the outside world, via some sort of network, although you can do so, and certainly that would allow you to manage players remotely. But strictly speaking, any connection upstream from the switch is something that you decide because you want it, not because the players need it. In a BrightWall project, 2 files are created by BrightAuthor. There's the BrightAuthor project file, of course, but BrightAuthor also creates a Bright Screen configuration file that it maintains the screen configuration separately. This has the advantage of allowing you to edit projects without having to go back and create a screen configuration each time. If I've got a 2 by 2 video wall, I can save that 2 by 2 configuration and reuse it every time I build a new project. So don't be surprised when BrightWall asks you to create a configuration or to pull a configuration you've already used. So let's go forward and build one. Here in my example, I plan to build a 3-screen video wall, a 3x1, if you will, 3 media players, a data switch, and 3 screens. I have 3 separate video files I wish to run in sync. So I'm going to leave PowerPoint, and here on my desktop, you see I've got a folder with 3 files, cleverly named File 1, File 2, and File 3. Now these files are all designed to run in sync. In fact, if I briefly preview one of these files, you'll see that it is clearly something that would run to the right, or sorry, to the left side of what's going on. And then I've got the file number 2 here, which I'll run briefly preview, and you'll see that it's the middle section of this BrightWall project. And finally, I've got screen 3, which is the rightmost file. These files all were generated off one After Effects canvas and designed to run in frame accurate sync with each other. So I've got my 3 files here on my desktop. Let's open BrightAuthor and build a BrightWall project. On the Create tab, you'll find the BrightWall feature. You click BrightWall and BrightAuthor immediately asks, do you want to open a past project or would you like to create something new? And if you're creating something new, do you already have a configuration file you'd like to browse to and use, or will you build a new configuration file? Now, for the sake of argument, let's build a new configuration file. I'm going to choose the LS player at 1080 resolution, and mine is a 1x3 video wall. This domain reference will default to 0, and 0 is a fine setting. The purpose of the domain reference is to keep separate different BrightWall projects that may happen to be connected to the same data switch. Imagine a case where I have a large presentation space, and maybe on one wall I've got a 2x2, and on a separate wall I've got a 3x3, so 2 separate video walls, but they're both right in the same room. And I only bought one data switch with 16 ports, so I've got them all configured to the data switch. To prevent each wall interfering with the other, assign the 2 walls different domains, put one in domain 0 and the other in domain 1. And the walls will run simultaneously but separately on the same data switch. And then finally, we give you space here to compensate for display bezels. Every manufacturer has a slightly different set of display bezel measurements. Some manufacturers have 0 bezel displays. There's no rule here other than to play with it a bit until you get it right. If you want to get out your ruler and measure pixels to inches, you can take that approach. My approach has been to mess with these percentages until things look about right. But this is all saved in the configuration. So once you've got this done, I'll do a save as here and call this my 1x3. Looks like I've used that before, so we'll call this another 1x3 and save it. Once that's saved, you can reuse it, so you don't need to go through that whole bezel comp exercise every time. All right, we'll build our new project right here, create a new BrightWall, and it asks, do I want a regular or stretched wall? Regular means I have a file for each screen. Stretched means I plan to stretch a single file across the video wall. I'm going to stay with regular, that's what I've got. And audio, audio in a video wall is a challenging thing. Generally, you don't want audio out every display of a video wall, and in a BrightWall mode, only the first player outputs audio. None of the other players will. So the settings here are for the audio that will come from the very first player. If you have no audio on your wall, and many don't, simply uncheck this and the system will run silently. But if you have audio connected and want HDMI or an analog audio output, you have that option. Okay, having made these choices, BrightWall then gives me a representation of the 3 screens. Now, you may note this doesn't look like the 3 screens I had intended to use, and frankly, it doesn't matter. All that matters at this point is that I get the right screen on the right, the right file on the right screen. It really doesn't matter how these screens are arranged, whether they're portrait or landscape or whatever. So screen 1 gets file 1. Screen 2 gets file 2. And screen 3 gets file 3, and I'm just now realizing I'm pulling this from a different folder than the one on my desktop. So let's do that again, and this time use the folder that I said I was going to use. We'll browse to that folder on my desktop, which is right here, 3 screens sync. There we go, screens 1, 2, and 3. So file 1, file 2, and file 3. We save our project, and this project is ready to publish. That is all there is to it. You do not need to worry about calculating any sort of synchronization scheme. BrightAuthor knows that these 3 files need to run in sync on these 3 screens, and BrightAuthor will take care of that. Now, when I go to publish, I choose, if I intend to run this through the BrightSign network service, I would upload it at this point. So that a copy of it would be available to run through the service. I'm going to simply publish direct to a folder on my desktop so that you can see what BrightAuthor does. Let's browse to my desktop and create a new folder that I will call Publish. So there's my new folder on the desktop for publishing. I'm going to publish as standalone units. Now here I have to choose BrightWall, so the BrightAuthor knows I'm publishing a BrightWall. Choose local storage and publish. BrightAuthor will ask, where do you intend to publish? I could publish, as I'm going to here, into a single folder, and I'll show you what happens, or publish each screen individually, prompting for each screen. I would use this mode if I intend to feed SD cards into my computer one at a time. BrightAuthor will say, well, give me card 1, give me card 2, give me card 3, and it will prepare each card. I'm going to choose a single folder here on my desktop and say publish. It won't take long because there are only 3 files involved. That's done. Now we can close BrightAuthor and take a look at the result. If I open this folder, the publish folder, I see screen 1, 2, and 3 folders were created, and within each folder, the files that the player will need to run the project. So the screen 1 folder looks like this, the screen 2 folder looks the same, and the screen 3 folder looks the same. So I would take these contents and copy them to a card for screen 1 and do the same for screen 2 and screen 3. Place those cards in the media player and the project will run flawlessly in sync. I hope this has been helpful. Let us know if you have questions.